Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Kopite Podcast and episode 5 of Famous Fans. I'm Mick, and I'm delighted to be joined by chef, TV presenter, and massive Liverpool fan Simon Rimmer. Thanks for jumping on, Simon. How are you doing?
Hi, Mick. I'm all right. Yeah, I'm good form, Mick. Yeah, you?
Yeah, good. We've just been talking about how nice your t-shirt is. Having a little chat about that. Looks nice.
Very much. Well, Mick from Scarf for Badge, I've known for years. I just think he does some of the best t-shirts. It's that thing is that, when you go into the club shop, then they're a bit naff, aren't they? You know what I mean? They've somehow not quite got what your average fan wants. And I'm not quite sure how they keep missing the boat on that. And then, you look at someone like Mick and then like Love, Follow, Conquer again, do some kind of great t-shirts, and you look and you go, why don't the club listen and see what people really want?
Exactly. And I mean, I'm wearing like a Liverpool one, which is from the shop, but it's one of the very few I've bought from the shop, to be fair. I'm like you. I go to independent, like Moving Unit, and there's loads out there that do really, really good stuff, like you said, like Hat, Scarf and a Badge and Love, Follow, Conquer and stuff like that. But yeah, I just thought we'd get into it, Simon, like just start from the beginning, really, and how you became a Liverpool fan back in the day.
I mean, my family are lifelong Liverpool fans. I mean, I think the story that illustrates it best of all is my grandfather was offered a contract at Everton and turned it down because he was a Liverpool supporter. So it's always been the way that's our family. And my dad denies that he ever said this. But when I started primary school, my best mate at the time was an Everton fan. And I came home from school and I said, how come, we're Liverpool fans, not Everton fans? And my dad, he was a Catholic. My dad said to me, he goes, well, son, he goes, you know that we're God's chosen people because we live on Merseyside? I said, yeah, I know that. He goes, well, we're the particularly chosen ones because we're Liverpool fans, so we can't be anything else. And my dad to this day denied. I said, I would never, ever say that, but he did. I remember it clearly. So I suppose that illustrates really that's our family. And I'm also glad to say, even though, I've lived in Manchester for 34 years and both my kids were born in Manchester, then my son Hamish, who's 19 now, he has always been a Red, which is great.
Oh, even better then, as long as you can get a win over born Mancunians and make them Liverpool fans. That's it. Yeah, take that as a win.
Yeah.
But yeah, and another thing I noticed, I don't know if you remember, like I think it might have been last week or the week before, someone that I know on Twitter, Colin, mentioned that you used to sit in the lower Kemlyn at Anfield. Do you still go most of the games? I know I've spoken to you since we started chatting. I know you do anyway.
I mean, I go to as many as I can. I think work is the only thing that stops me. A lot of it depends on the time of the games. Last season, I did really, really well. I think I went to 15, maybe 16 last season. I also had a really brilliant year last year because my lad, Hamish, again, then he'd started a degree apprenticeship, but he only had to work 3 days a week. So we also went away to Atletico Madrid, went away to Milan, we went to the Champions League final. And I just had a really great time going away with him. But it could be that, for example, I can't do 5:30 on a Saturday games because I have to get to London on a Saturday night and I missed the last train. I can't do the earlies on a Sunday because I'm in London. I can manage the 4:30. So I go to as many as I possibly can. But I gave up my season ticket when I was in the Lower Kemlyn. Then I didn't have restaurants then. So this is going back a good few years. And then when I started having restaurants, then basically I worked all 7 days a week. I opened my first restaurant in 1990 and it became harder. First of all, I then shared it with a mate of mine. We did 50-50, but then he was getting like 80-20. So then we did 75-25. I'm just not going. So I had a few years when I barely went. But I'm lucky now that, I get to go to, many more than I used to.
Yeah, and it's a good time to go, which we'll come to towards the end of the show, just so you can stick around and listen to the rest of the stuff first before we get into that stuff. I don't know, it's maybe not the nicest topic, but I know that you were there on the day at Hillsborough, and I've seen some of the pictures actually with you with a big mop of air, which is looking very snazzy with the long
Yeah.
hair back in the day. But as a 26-year-old, and obviously it's sadly one of our darkest days. But now that you look back on it, obviously, like, it was ruled in 2016 that it was unlawful killing, like, after 27 years, which is obviously 27 years too late. Obviously, a lot of unnecessary blood, sweat, and tears, and but it did kind of show the power of the people of Liverpool, didn't it, in a way? And that's kind of what you've got to take from it, albeit the outcome still isn't what we want, is it?
Yeah. No, and that whole day, all of us that were there know the fact that it was lies from the outset. And I think that that's the biggest thing about it, isn't it? I think that if the day after that, the government, the police, everyone would have held out and said, we've made some mistakes here, then I think everyone would have said, yeah, you did, but thank you for acknowledging it. And then, of course, then the dreadful headline from the Sun compounded the whole thing, where it just became lie upon lie upon lie. And it still hurts now. I still find it hard, as many people do, to talk about it without, I could feel, I feel tension and emotion kind of welling up in me there. Standing there and watching it unfold is still probably, the darkest time of my life. And I think, like many Liverpool fans, I don't think there's a day goes by that it doesn't enter my thoughts. And I think it always will. And I think it always should as well, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, isn't it? Like, it's with you. And it's with you not for a good thing, but for a thing that you can take forward in your life, and you can always go, well, I was there, I saw it unfortunately unfold, but it showed, like I said before, the power of the people of Liverpool, that you don't want to mess with us in terms of trying to pull a fast one and try and say that we're doing this and we're doing that, and it clearly wasn't the case. And in terms of that, then, did you watch? Sorry, Simon, go on.
Well, the other thing I was going to say about it is, I also think one of the things that and a person that I really greatly admire as a result of it, the day that Andy Burnham did a speech at the memorial service and got shouted down with justice, and the day after he said, I will push on this, and fair play to him, he did. And, Andy Burnham, who's now, Mayor of Greater Manchester, and I think that he is a fine modern politician. And I think, I think everybody connected with the whole of what happened to Hillsborough. I think he has been very instrumental in setting the wheels in motion. That, okay, the outcome hasn't been everything that we wanted, but nonetheless, I think without his intervention, I still think we would have been where we were prior to that day.
Yeah, definitely. Did you watch the Anne documentary, the Hillsborough documentary?
I couldn't watch it, to be honest with you. I can't watch anything about it, whether it be dramatization or old footage. And in fact, 2 weekends ago on Sunday Brunch, we were doing an outside broadcast from the Tramlines Festival that's right by Hillsborough. And when they were taking me from the hotel, I said to the driver, do we drive past Hillsborough? He said, well, we can do if you want. I said, no. I was going to say, if we do, can we go another way? Because I just think, I don't know if I think the closest I've seen to anything about it is the Kenny Dalglish film. And that moment when Kenny goes back to Hillsborough and he can't bring himself to go down the hill. And I get it, that moment in the film, and, you see all the magnificent things that Kenny Dalglish is, and you think, I get it, 32 years on, I still couldn't face, going in that stadium. So I can't watch anything about it. Can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I was born in '89, so I weren't even thought about it at that time. But I mean, I was also at Tramlines, and I went to the Hillsborough ground after, and it even, like, obviously being alive and whatever, but to kind of live the life of what it was and what it became, and the fight and all that behind it, to kind of go and see the ground and stuff. I think it's something every Liverpool fan should do. I think, of my age anyway, especially to kind of experience maybe the atmosphere in there, and to kind of see what it was like, and maybe to kind of maybe immerse yourself in that, and kind of think and be glad maybe that you weren't there and you weren't entangled in in all that, albeit obviously it's.
I always think one of the things that my kids and their generation don't understand is that what they couldn't understand is that after that game, that we then had to drive for miles, because obviously every single public phone box, the queues were, miles long. And we just got in the car and said, right, let's go and find someone we can get. So we drove miles out of Sheffield and found this pub sort of up in the hills. And we're in there, and the landlord was just a proper gent. He said, "Listen, come upstairs into my accommodation, phone your families, let them know that you're safe." And that whole thing of mobile phones, we're so used to, aren't we? That you pick up your phone, you've got the world literally in your hands. And that whole thing of like my family waiting to hear words that I was safe and everybody else. I think that's the other thing that that you forget. We're so used to technology now.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things that you don't even factor in, do you, when you think about it from a perspective now? You're not thinking about the logistics of having to travel to phone boxes and whatever else, and obviously, like you said, people waiting for word and obviously seeing it on the news and not knowing if you're safe and stuff. So that's like
exactly
it adds to the terror, doesn't it, in a way? But yeah, I haven't watched the documentary either. I think I will eventually, but I think. Yeah, I just can't.
I feel like I should, but I can't bring myself to do it. Like I say, even talking about it now, I can't. It's like proper deep breath moment. Really is.
Yeah, I know. It's just one of those, isn't it? Like I think I will watch it just out of, I don't know, it's like out of respect to kind of watch how they've portrayed it in a way and whatever. But at the time when it was coming out, I was like, I'm happy it's out there and people are watching it. But I was like, I can't, or even though I weren't old enough and whatever to be at the time and whatever to be a Liverpool fan and stuff. But just the whole history behind it and stuff is just, it just holds so much weight, doesn't it? But let's move on to something a bit lighter, because I mean, we could chat about Hillsborough all day, and albeit it's not a nice topic to talk about. So we'll move on to something a little bit lighter, and before we just talk about Sunday brunch a little bit before we get back onto the Liverpool stuff. Why not? Yeah. Obviously, you've been doing that with Tim Lovejoy for, is it 10 years now?
10 years, yeah. And then we did 6 years on the Beeb before that. So Tim and I have worked together every weekend for the last 16 years. It's a long time.
Not sick of him yet?
Well, I think you become,
I mean that in a nice, way.
But you become like an old married couple. You know what I mean? That there are times when we will get on each other's nerves, but fundamentally we are very, very close friends. We've got kids of a similar age. We're very serious about what we do, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. Both love our footy, so it's a joy. It really is. It really is the best job in the world. We get paid to have fun for 3 hours every Sunday. It's incredible.
Yeah, and you have some like amazing guests, and you get to eat your lovely food.
Incredible.
And it's like,
it is incredible. I mean, I think we properly punch above our weight. For a show that's on a Sunday morning at 9:30. To think we've had the likes of kind of like, Phil Collins and movie stars on, and Kenny Dalglish has been on, and John Barnes has been on. You think it's just brilliant. We get paid to do it. It's incredible.
No, for me, Sunday morning, bang, Sunday brunch on. I'm not just saying that. That's just a ritual, and I'm sure a lot of people are the same as well. But you just mentioned some guests that you had there. Who's been your favourite, if you can pick one?
I mean, I think every time they're on, I think Vic Reeves and Bob Mortimer bring something to the show that nobody else does. Legends. Because they don't live on our planet. They really, really don't. The very first time they were on, so, that thing that it's back in the days when we used to cook with the guests, sort of pre-COVID. And we're there and, we sort of say to them, so do you both cook? And Vic goes, well, I don't. So, but Bob likes to cook, don't you, Bob? And he goes, yeah. He goes, what was that lovely thing you made for me the other day? He goes, oh, the risotto with the headache of a swan. I go, what? And where does that even come from? And their world is just brilliant. And when they're on, you just let them go, because you don't know where they're going to go at all. They're just genius. They are always my favourite guests, always. But then you get surprising guests like Phil Collins, I sort of mentioned before, and he was just the sweetest, loveliest man. You know, at the end of the day, you know, he's a relatively old man now, but you know, he's a big rock star, and he's in there. He's in our little sort of area, our little green room area, and I was chatting away to him. And he stands and he goes, "Simon, do you think it would be all right if I asked somebody if I could have another cup of tea?" I think, mate, you're Phil Collins. They'll bring you they'll bring you a banquet if you ask them. And he was just, and I think that's the thing. I guess that's also true probably in many walks of life, that the bigger the star, then the nicer they tend to be, really. You know, we had Kathleen Turner on the show. She could not have been more fun. She was the most laid-back person. Didn't rock up with a big entourage, hair and her agent, that was it. And then she just did her own makeup, got on with it, and she was brilliant.
Oh, Phil Collins, like my dad's favourite singer, and then obviously that was passed on to me as a kid. So yeah, what a legend. And obviously, this is episode 5 of Famous Fans, but episode 4 was Alex Horne, and obviously he's the creator of the Taskmaster.
He's been on the show. He's great. Yeah.
And obviously he had Bob Mortimer on Taskmaster, and we had like a 10-minute chat just about Bob Mortimer, just because he's a legend.
Yeah, I can see it. It's like when he's ever on Would I Lie to You? Bob Mortimer just lives in a completely different world. The episode of Would I Lie to You where Bob Mortimer talks about Chris Rea putting an egg in his bathroom. If you've never seen it, check it out on YouTube. It is the best television you will ever see in your life. It is just so brilliant. So brilliant.
Yeah, I definitely second that, because I've seen it and it's absolutely hilarious.
Alex Horne, incidentally, the thing that's always amused about Alex Horne is he's 6 foot. And, you know, because you describe as little Alex Horne, because he sits on a lower seat than Greg, of course, is really tall. And then when you go, you can't be Alex Horne, you're tiny.
Yeah, because Greg's just like, what, 6'7", he's just a mammoth of a man, and then Alex Horne's like 6 foot. Say, like, yeah. It's he's a legend. That was a great episode with Alex. It's such a gent. But yeah, obviously, favorite guest, you just named a load there. But I just thought we'd just jump a little bit over to just food a little bit more. And obviously, you've got a lot of restaurants and stuff, and obviously a newer one that's opened, another Greens restaurant that's opened recently, like an expansion. How's that all been going?
It's been amazing. I mean, we opened, Greens was my first restaurant, the original Greens in Didsbury, in 1990. And every other restaurant I've had, we've always done good veggie food in them. It's always been sort of part of the heritage. And then about 18 months ago, I don't know why, I just thought it felt like all the ducks were in a row. There's a bigger interest in veggie and vegan food, and restaurants have a certain amount of ego and arrogance about them. And I was seeing a lot of things that were opening up with like fake meat and blah, blah, blah. And I don't do any of that. I thought, you know what? I still think that what we do is more interesting, exciting, and relevant. So I just decided in a moment of madness that wouldn't it be great to open yet another restaurant. So we opened 4 weeks ago. And I said before we came on air, Mick, that, you know, I'm actually back on the tools. I mean, I spend a lot of time in the kitchens, but normally my role is sort of developing food, not actually being in service. And I'd forgotten how hard it is to do it day in, day out. Doing the odd shift is fine, but I've been in the kitchen full time now for the last 5 weeks. My hips, my knee, my back, my shoulders, you name it, it all hurts. I feel like I'm like a little withered old man. I can't stand up straight at the moment, but I'm loving it. It's been really busy. It's been brilliant, and you know we've just had really nice feedback. And Ian Rush has been in, so it's got to be good.
Wow, Rushy, bloody hell, boss that.
Yeah,
I think it's one of those you're saying about like clicks. That's where every part of your body clicks. I mean, I can't say much. I'm only 32, so I'm not going to start saying I'm an old man and whatever, but. If you had Russian, that's amazing. I was also going to ask, so the green stuff's obviously vegetarian, but are you a full veggie then, or you're not a veggie, are you?
I'm not. I mean, what happened is when we opened Greens in 1990, we were looking to buy a restaurant, but we had no money basically. And back in the day, like now, if you decide you want to open a restaurant, you find an empty shop and you can turn it into a restaurant. But back then, planning consent was very different. You weren't allowed to just open a restaurant. You had to get what is still called A3 usage, but you had to really buy an existing premises. So Greens existed as a very hippie downbeat veggie calf, and we managed to persuade a bank to lend us the money to buy it. And the plan originally was that we keep it for 2 years and then open in inverted commas a real restaurant. And I just fell in love with cooking veggie food almost from day one. And then we won quite a few awards quite early on. I think because inadvertently we were sort of quite trailblazers. I think because we weren't veggie. Because back then, a lot of veggie food was very kind of, it's always about what you couldn't eat rather than celebrating what you could. And ours was always, right, well, we've got amazing ingredients, we've got amazing cheeses, we can make great sauces. Why don't we just celebrate that rather than, no, you mustn't eat that and you mustn't eat that. So we've always gone with that, really. And that brought us loads and loads of success. And to this day, I still think it's, from a cooking point of view, then it's still the most challenging from a creativity point of view. You've always got to do something. You know, you get a nice piece of fillet steak, take it out the wrapper, put it in the pan, cook it, game on. Get an aubergine, it's quite tricky to do that. You know, you've got to do something with it. So you've got to be creative.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things I've always thought about. Like, if I had to, I could become a veggie. I think I could. Because when I've been to like nice restaurants and you go, I fancy the veggie option, you have it, you're like, this is actually really nice. And it's like,
yeah.
But then I probably crave steak the next day. It's one of those things.
but I think I find now that I eat less and less meat, not for any reason other than it's just almost been that's the way it's sort of developed, really. But yeah, but also I think it's that thing that you don't have to be veggie to come and enjoy veggie food. You know, in the same way that, you know, I love going for a curry, but I'm not Indian. You know what I mean? It's the cuisine that you're going for rather than, you know, say, oh, I can't go there because I'm not veggie.
Yeah, exactly. And in terms of obviously opening Greens in 1990 and obviously doing loads more stuff since then. Have you got a favorite chef that you've worked with, or have you got someone that you want to work with in the future or anything like that?
Well, I suppose in terms of favorite chef that I've worked with is somebody who isn't famous. Back in about 1994, this Aussie lad just walked in through the door of Greens. We were looking for a chef, and the Australian cuisine back then, they did all that kind of like that fusion cuisine, that using kind of like your Southeast Asian flavors with European flavors. And he came in and sort of revolutionized the way that I thought about ingredients, really. Like called Gavin Hunt, still in touch with them now. He's back in Oz. And he was a big influence on the way that I cook. But then in terms of sort of famous chefs, if you like, whilst I don't think I want to work with any of them, I still love watching Rick Stein. If this is someone on, this is probably one of the few people I watch cook on telly, it's Rick, because he's a great storyteller. And I think he makes things very accessible. And he has a love of ingredients. And he's still the person that whenever he's on, if I'm flipping through the channels, I'll skip food programs unless it's Rick, and I will watch him.
Yeah, and I know it's something on Sunday Brunch where you'll kind of just flick to someone who's done like a recipe. And sometimes if it's someone else, I might go, oh, I'll turn over for now. But if it's Rick Stein, I'll be like, I'll fancy a bit of this.
He just makes you want to do it, doesn't he? He makes you want to be in the kitchen. I think he's a tremendous, and you know, I do a podcast called Grilling, and he was a great guest on there. He's a really good storyteller because he became a chef by default. That he was a nightclub owner. And the nightclub got shut down because fishermen kept fighting in it. So he thought, I've got this premises, what I'm going to do. I know, I'll open the restaurant. So he'd worked a little bit when he was younger, fundamentally as a kitchen porter and a veg prep chef. Thought, well, I'll just start cooking food. And that's how he started. So his stories are good as well. He's lived a life, Rick Stein, let me tell you.
Wow, that's amazing. And I mean, it doesn't surprise me because he does seem like he's been like enriched by life and enriched by what he's doing, because it comes out in the storytelling, doesn't it? I suppose.
Yeah.
But I thought we'd move on from food a little bit, Sam, and we'll get back to what a Liverpool podcast, the Liverpool FC podcast. So I just thought we'd jump back into that a little bit, and I thought we'd come back to the current Liverpool setup and just ask you what you've made of Jurgen Klopp since he came in 2015.
Just the greatest time, I think, in all my time as a Liverpool fan, including, like, you know, having been somebody who was there in the glory days of the 80s. I think this has been the greatest time. I think because he came in when we weren't in a particularly good place. Don't get me wrong. I think that Brendan Rodgers did a much better job than people give him credit for under the restrictions that he had. But Jurgen came in and got the city and got the club from the outset. And I think that he's a very clever human being. He's a good socialist. He's a good motivator of people. And I love him. And I think that's the starting point for it. And then the evolution that he's done, because I always think football has to be about evolution, not revolution, really, unless things are really dire, and they weren't really dire. And he very quickly changed it, and that doubt is to believe it. All of his little sound bites he's done are magnificent. And you want to think that they're all off the cuff, but there's a very clever man in there. Like when he criticised everybody for leaving early at the Crystal Palace game, and they beat us, saying, like, I felt lonely. And it's changed the whole dynamic of what, don't get me wrong, people still do leave before the end, but not in the droves that they were back in the day. And some of his signings, it's just Virgil van Dijk, Alisson Becker, Mo Salah, just incredible signings, and still it continues. And I know he's not the only one that controls that, but and that team spirit, you see the way that all the players are with him, and he's the boss. That's all, isn't he? He is the boss.
Yeah, and I think it's testament to how good he is at identifying the players that when we signed Darwin Núñez, there was all of a sudden a clamour for him to fail. And it's like, I think that's kind of the thing where we sign players now and rival fans go, we want him to fail. We're going to try our best to make him fail. But Darwin Núñez then pops up with a goal against Man City and a goal against Fulham. So to kind of silence them briefly for now, obviously, hopefully silence us even more for the rest of the season. But I thought we're going to timestamp the video a little bit about talking about Fulham, but I just thought we'd jump into that a little bit and just ask what you made of it. Obviously, it's drawing 2-2 at first game of the season. It wasn't great, but it was...
I went. No, I went, and it's we just looked off it from the start. I thought. I thought that sometimes you go and you see 5 minutes and you think, we're getting bullied here. We're not soaking up the pressure. We're getting bullied. There's a difference, isn't there? Sometimes teams will come at us and you think, you're not really hurting us, but you felt. I can't think of anybody in the first half who actually had a good game. I'm really, really struggling to think who actually you'd sort of go, well, at least he had a good game. Even Virgil looked a little bit shaky, I thought, in the first half.
I think maybe Diaz might be the only one who scored a goal which was offside and then hit the post. But apart from that, I don't think there's anyone.
Yeah, but even Diaz, I felt I didn't know where he was playing. I thought he was coming in too far and coming too deep, because a lot of times when Robert got the ball and had absolutely no outlet, because I felt like Diaz was going. I mean, maybe that was what he was told to do, but it felt a weird tactic that we weren't stretching them. But it was poor. But the minute Núñez came on, we looked better. I do actually think if we hadn't conceded the penalty, I think we would have gone to win. At 1-1, when we equalised, I thought, right, that was the first time we looked as if, we might do something here. But you know what? We're not going to win every game. And I think the good thing is that Klopp straight after said, we were dreadful. We weren't good enough. And you want that, don't you? I think there's nothing worse as a fan when you hear him and you go, well, there's some positives to take from it. He didn't have any. Oh,
yeah. Long are the days where draw with like Blackpool and Roy Hodgson comes out saying we're not too big for a relegation fight. It's the stuff for nightmares. But yeah, that's what you want from it. You want a manager to come out and say, we were shit. It needs sorting. The attitude weren't great. And it's going to, hopefully it'll be sorted for next Monday against Palace. So that's what we want. But yeah, not a great start. Obviously, City go on to beat West Ham and Haaland scores twice, and you kind of like, all my nightmares.
But I think that's good, I think that's good, because I think if City hadn't won, then we'd be sitting there going, yeah, you know what, but at least City didn't win. And we'd be going, we kind of got away with it. Was it because they did win and Haaland looks like he's going to score 40 goals this season? Then you go, well, you know what? That's one of the very few points that we can afford to drop. So, we've got to go for it.
Yeah, very good point. I hadn't thought about that like that. That's a very good point, because obviously we would have then maybe rest on our laurels a little bit for the Palace game, and then
Yeah,
might not have bigged
yeah.
ourselves up in the right way. But yeah, we're getting towards the end, Simon, and I just thought we'd play a little game before we go. Obviously, if you've watched Sunday Brunch, you know that they do a thing called King of the Tin, which is basically you choose your favourite biscuit and you choose your worst biscuit. So King of the Tin, your favourite biscuit; Crumb Dungeon, your worst biscuit; or Crumb Dungeon / Crumsion.
Better known as the Crumsion. Yeah.
The Crumsion, yeah.
Yeah.
But I just thought, initially I was going to say, let's do it with biscuits, but I thought that might be a bit boring. So I thought, let's do it with footy players. And I tried to think of a nice little fancy name to call it, but I couldn't think of any. So I just thought, we'll just call it what it is. So I just thought to ask you your favourite ever Liverpool player of all time and your worst.
Favourite's got to be Kenny. I remember seeing him because I loved Keegan when I was young. So like I'm 59. So when Keegan left in 77, I was 14 and I was gutted. And then Kenny came in and I saw his first game against Newcastle and I forgot about Kevin Keegan overnight. He was absolutely magnificent. And I'm also, do you like to say, he's become a friend over the years, which I find, people say you shouldn't meet your heroes. Well, I got involved doing some work with Marina's foundation and got to know him. And he's just the loveliest man. And I think also, touching back on Hillsborough, I don't use the word hero very lightly. I think Kenny Dalglish became my true hero, the way he behaved as a human being at Hillsborough. And I think, that for me is his great asset. But as a player, he is the number one for me. If I was going to go for a 2 and 3, I'd probably go Stevie Gerrard as 2. Then I'm torn between Robbie Fowler and Ian Rush for 3. But, it gets hard. But then equally, then you look at things like, I always loved Ray Clements and I loved Alan Hansen. But let's just stick with Kenny, because otherwise this is going to go on for hours.
I was going to say, you spoil for choice. You really are.
Yeah. And worst ever. Wow.
El Hadj Diouf.
I think I'm probably going to go Sean Dundee. It was either him or Voronin, really, but at least Voronin scored the odd goal. I remember watching poor Sean Dundee come on as a sub, and I forget what it was, we lost at home during that dreadful spell. We couldn't beat anybody, and the ball came over to him on the right hand side. Now, back in the days when I was sitting in the Kemlin, and he went to trap the ball and completely missed it, and ran out for a throw in. And normally everyone would moan, everyone just laughed, because you felt, this. And I hate saying a worst player, because I've never been one to kind of boo players or anything, but he was never good enough, ever. Who would your worst ever be, Mick?
I think I would go El Hadj Diouf, to be honest, only because because I think it helps in my mind anyway, because we got an Elka on loan. We should have signed an Elka permanently. And of course, the late great Gerard Houllier went for El Hadj Diouf instead, and then he became the worst human being to ever pull on a Liverpool shirt. The whole spitting thing, and I was just not a good fella. Maybe not the worst if you factor in all football and ability. Maybe not the worst in that respect, but as a collective, I think it's him for me.
I think it's a good, because you're ashamed to say he was a Liverpool player. Yeah. Whereas I'm not ashamed to say Sean Dundee. You think Paul Ladd was never really good enough. Well, El Hadj Diouf, you're right. I think you've beaten me there, because I do think as a human, then you just he did play for us.
Yeah. And to be honest, Sam, we did an interview with Sean Dundee about last year or maybe the year before. And we just wanted to get his take on it, obviously, because he was always listed as like you rightly said, as the worst Liverpool players, and he was always in that list. So me and Jay got him on to have a chat, and he kind of just owned up to it. He just said I wasn't ready, I wasn't fit, I wasn't good enough. If I could do it again differently, I would. And it was a really, really good chat with a really nice fella who obviously was brought to the club, and it just didn't work out. And I just felt, since then, he probably would have been mine. But since then, obviously, that changes your perspective because you've met the guy and you've chatted to him and stuff. So, Al Hadjouf, and best for me would be Steven Gerrard. But then obviously you've got the embarrassment of riches with your choices there. So you definitely win.
Yeah. I think as an individual, Steven Gerrard undoubtedly would win games on his own. Champions League final 2005, obviously being the prime example of it. But it was amazing. But then equally, already coming into my head, I love Gabby Alonso. Absolutely love that man. But then equally on the same vein, I love Jan Molby back in the day. Anyway, we could go on, but then equally, there's times last season, like when we beat United 4-0, Thiago put in a performance and he hit balls that to this day I've never seen a player hit a football. I thought, I don't even know how you've done that. But I also think that in 10 years' time, when you're still doing this, that the next generation, I think Trent will be right up there with one of those, because I think, whilst he had a poor game against Fulham, I think he's going to be an absolute and utter Liverpool legend.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a good place to leave it. I don't want to take up too much of your time tonight, Sam, but I just wanted to say thanks again for taking the time to jump on. And we really appreciate it.
Our pleasure. I've enjoyed it, Mick.
Definitely try and get you back on. Obviously, it's only been a 40-minute video, so try and get you on again and do maybe some more chat about Ian Rush and some of the old school players and have a maybe best 11 or something like that. That would be good.
All right, love to, mate. Love to. All right, nice.
Yeah, if you watch it on YouTube, do like the video if you liked it and subscribe. If you watch it or if you're listening, I should say, on audio platforms like Spotify or Apple Podcast or Deezer or anything like that, do leave us a review, because we're trying to get those algorithms better so you can listen to these like podcasts with Sam and Rimmer and stuff like that. But yeah, nice one again, Sam, and nice one everyone for watching. And up the Reds, and we'll see you next time.